Hello and welcome to the Fedora Files. I am Gregory Fedora, your host, and with me today is Christopher Battles. What a great name for a former Marine Corps combat artist. You've also deployed with the Navy. What are you currently? What is your job title?
Well, I'm currently the Marine Corps' artist in residence, and so I still have a role of combat artist, but I'm generally speaking tasked with creating historical paintings about Marine Corps history, as well as running the program of the combat artists. And so I deploy combat artists, I train and assist combat artists, and mentor and that sort of thing.
That's that. Now, the Marines have a combat. Do all the military branches have like a combat artist, or is this just strictly a Marine thing that they do?
Well, we're very fortunate. We have several combat artists in the entire DoD. So each branch traditionally has a combat artist or two. So the Coast Guard has several that they use, and they also use civilians. The Air Force is the same way. They have a few uniformed Air Force reservist artists. The Army has an artist in residence, as well as people that they use, I think, on the civilian side as well. And of course, the Marine Corps and the Navy. The Navy has two civilian artists currently employed, and they had a uniformed artist. So each branch has artists in and out of uniform.
So first of all, I want to know, how do you become a combat artist? Obviously, you have to be artistic and then a badass because you're a Marine. And I think I can say that. It's my show. So, but yes, you have to be both, correct? I mean, because it's not like, oh, here's an artist, good luck, here's a uniform. You have to be able to pass the Marines tests and all that, correct?
Yeah, it's interesting in the fact that you have to find somebody that is trained artistically, who has skills, visual skills, ability to draw fast, to draw what they see, sort of reportage art. But you also have to have a person who is willing and able to go overseas or whenever, every climb in place, as the Marine Corps says, and it's rough sometimes, and you have to be physically fit. And to go on board ships, you also have to be able to be physically able to go on ships and do everything that you are recording people doing. So yeah, it's both. You have to be artistically skilled and physically capable.
So you actually have deployed into combat situation. What was for you like a kind of a scary situation, if you're allowed to talk about it, like that you were involved, that you were there and you're doing your art, but also under fire or anything like that?
I was very fortunate. I went to Iraq twice and Afghanistan once, and then all across the world in different training exercises. I was very fortunate never to be directly shot at, although I was close by people getting wounded by mortar fire. And then we had people, like, I'd arrive at a scene and would have just missed the action, or right after we left, it would happen. So I was very fortunate that I never directly had to fire my weapon in anger, and luckily was never directly shot at. But my colleagues, several of my colleagues have experienced combat directly. And some of the civilian artists that we employ also, as civilian artists, were involved in combat situations where they were recording, doing their work while under fire. So it is a dangerous job. And we're always going, so to speak, to the sound of the guns. I know Marines are sort of known for that sort of thing. But so combat artists are risking their lives for their profession, which is kind of rare for most artists. You don't usually see an artist so dedicated that they will go to a place that's kind of dangerous in order to capture the artwork.
So historically, like, how long, like, the artist, like combat artist, has this always been a part of the military? When did it start? Like, how did it all begin? Like, who thought we should have artists going to battle?
Well, I think that it goes back thousands of years, because, as you know, whether it's art about hunting on the caves of Lascaux, or it's the Stella of Marni, or whatever it was called, where you have, the great king or the pharaoh. And so you have a faithfully recording artist talking about, and some of that, of course, back then was, propaganda, obviously. But we, from the earliest recordings of history, most of what we have visually is war art. So some of the oldest art is war art, and some of the earliest records are visual records. So combat art goes back as long as people have been going to war, basically.
And drawing.
Yes.
So how did you, like, obviously, how did you decide, I want to do this? I want to, because this is something like a lot of people don't even know exists. You guys, like I like searching cryptozoology things. You guys are kind of like the Bigfoot of the artist industry. You're there, you're out there. People think you exist. They're not sure, but they don't even know about you. Some of you are like, what is a comet? Like where, how does one decide I'm growing up, I want to go to war and draw pictures? Like how do you get there? How did you
Uh,
get there?
Practice, man, practice. No, for me, it was a calling. I know that that sounds old fashioned, but you do. All of us seek to find ways to express ourselves artistically or whatever talents we might have, whether it's athletics or whatever. So for me, it was always sort of I had two of these threads and strains in my being ever since I can remember. One was drawing, loving to draw, and another was the love of history and military things. And so some of my earliest drawings were either football, dinosaurs, or war. So and not in that order or not mixing those obviously. Uh, but so drawing combat scenes from my mind or history, I used to draw history scenes. So for me, it was just a natural, almost a vocation in the traditional sense. And so I think it has to be for this profession, you have to feel called to do it because you are sometimes risking your life or you're at least in dangerous if you're on the deck of an aircraft carrier for example, it's a dangerous environment, so you are willing to put yourself in a job that's not necessarily always safe so that you can produce art that will tell this story for hundreds of years. So it's sort of a higher calling in a sense, not just a job, and you really have to feel that you're called to do it.
So obviously your art is historic, and so that in a way that has to be too kind of mind-boggling to know that the things you are drawing and painting are going to be part of the history that people are going to go back and look back and see a Christopher Battles painting of Afghanistan or Iraq, and like hundreds of years from now your art is going to be viewed. And for an artist that's awesome, yeah. And like because most artists, that never happens. Like is any of your art in books or in museums now that people could go see your work somewhere?
Sure. My work is currently on display. There's a traveling display for the Marine Corps. There's also my work is in the Navy art collection and in the Marine Corps Combat Art collection at the National Museum of the Marine Corps. It's been in various venues whenever they'll have a show, like the um, um, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. I was fortunate to have some of my work about Marine Corps aviation in that show several years back. So we are very fortunate. It's a wonderful thing to have your work taken care of. That's another draw to it. No pun
Hmm.
intended. Is that you have that it'll be worth it when you're doing this thing because there will be people that are dedicated to preserving that and keeping it. And so and then also for 100 years from now, people our posterity will say, "Oh, that was what it was like to be in Iraq." And somebody might even say, "Oh, that's my granddaddy," or one of my descendants may say, "Oh, yeah, he did that. That's our family that did that." So it is a big plus to know that your work is going to be taken care of and that it'll have a record. And people may see it in books and in displays and exhibitions years from now.
So do you have a favorite painting that you have, or an experience? Maybe it's like not necessarily the best painting you ever did, but an experience you had that this painting means a lot to you, and it's somewhere that people could go see. Like, do you have a favorite that is now being displayed somewhere that you like
Yeah.
really are like that was a I love this painting and I'm so glad people can see it? Is there one in particular that
Sure.
stands out to you?
Well, one of my favorite paintings, well, there's one for the Navy and there's one for the Marine Corps. The one for the Navy is lighting the boiler on USS Bataan, and it was on display at the Navy Yard in the in the art part of the Navy Museum. But I don't know if it's currently on display or not. But the other one is called A Little Light Reading, and it was a very large painting about these young Marines, sort of a slice of life. It was in Iraq in November of 2006, and I was at a little FOB, a forward operating base, and I had come out of this little chow hall, which was just a box, like on a ship and on a trailer, the cargo boxes or whatever, and they had put a kitchen in there, a little field kitchen. So I'd come out of there and I saw this scene in front of me, and there was Marines sitting around this little, they were making a fire in this little ammo can, and just because it was cold in the morning in November in Iraq, believe it or not. So and they were talking, and so I saw the sunlight coming through the cami netting, and it was just this perfect little scene, and it described military life and described what it was like to be a Marine at the time and what it was like most of the time in Iraq. And so I just started taking pictures and I sketched them while they were sitting and talked to them a little bit. And so that's still one of my favorite scenes as far as artistically and as far as message or story is concerned. And it's on display currently at the Marine Corps Museum, although we're closed at the moment. It's in the Marine Corps Heritage Foundation office on the wall for people to see.
So I guess I don't know how you call it, but like your passion, or not passion, but your genre is more painting, correct? Or but do you do other things like sculpting? Do you do like
Oh yes.
what kind of art do you do?
We are being most combat artists and most war artists or reportage artists. We are naturalists and realists, generally speaking. So we are traditional. We use traditional media, generally speaking, and we create work which may be expressive and semi-abstract, but usually tends towards realism and naturalism. So we're not trying to paint a rosy picture. We're not trying to propagandize. We're not trying to focus on even recruiting, for example. We are telling the story of what the Marines are doing. And of course, that will recruit, I think, because Marine Corps tends to do well. And so, so we tell it like it is with traditional media, but we sculpt, we draw. For example, when we go to a combat zone, this is a good example of my sketch bag. So we'll take some sort of portable, carry-all bag, and you can put a laptop in this too, but we'll have pencil kits, and we put our pens and pencils in here and that sort of thing. We'll have, let me see a little things like that. Sketchbooks. Most of what we do when we travel is sketching. So you're there, and a lot of photography. I take even my iPhone, but I'll have a camera, and I take a Nikon usually. And I'll keep a journal, and I'll jot notes down as well of who I saw, what we were doing that day, what the weather was like, perhaps what the coloring was like, and like I said, who I talked to and what the unit was that I was meeting with. And so you'll just take sketches and fill up sketchbooks galore. And then so you're in a way like a embedded reporter. Yes. So you're just an embedded sketch artist when you're there.
That's fascinating. So have you thought of putting together would you be allowed to put together all of your experiences, some of your art into a book form where people could see, like, because this time period, like, it is historic, like we're living in it now, but like the Iraq War, Afghanistan, all this, it is historic. But as you are employed by the Marines, would you be allowed to write a book telling of your experiences, or is that something Sure. you would have to wait till you retire?
No, I believe it can be done one of two ways. You can do it or both. You can do a book through the publishing company that I don't know if it's Navy Press or Marine Corps University Press, probably something like that, or you can do it on your own time and it can be published. There's nothing wrong with that, because the images themselves, whereas the physical images are property of the Marine Corps, the digital images, so to speak, are public domain. So our work is used by authors all the time. Okay. So a historian or even a novelist wants a picture or whatever, and to sort of jazz up the thing or tell the story, we can provide those digital images as a matter of the public record. So yeah, it's doable. It would be nice to do it, actually, I think, for history's sake.
Yeah, I think it'd be fascinating read. And what I found interesting, you have that bag you carry, and as a Marine, you obviously are also carrying a whole nother sack and your gun.
Oh, yes.
They're like the Marines themselves. They carry roughly like 80 pounds in general. And then you Absolutely. Have this whole extra. So like you said earlier, you have to be physically fit as well as artistically inclined to do this. And that's just to me, it's a crazy, interesting dichotomy where
it's taxing physically and emotionally. You also have to build the trust of the infantry or the unit you're out with, right? So I always joke about being like Jane Goodall. You're always trying to get closer to the guerrillas, and then eventually they'll let you in, and then you can be close to them.
So you have to prove alpha.
Yes, you have to prove that you're worthy of being in that group, because let me tell you, it is a hard group to be a part of, and not everyone can walk that walk. So and they don't trust easily, and you are putting yourself in their line of march, so to speak, and they're responsible for you. So they take that seriously, and they don't want you to be a liability. You have to prove that you can be an asset to what they're doing. So once they see that you're able to do it, you're going to hack it, and then also that you're producing these drawings and things for posterity. Then they warm up to you, and they like it a lot. So it's a great morale builder for them as well. And so that's an important part of what we do as well.
So I, you've also been embedded with like the Navy SEALs. What was correct? I
Yeah, we went on a patrol. Actually, as a Marine Corps combat artist, I went out on a patrol with civil affairs, but also we had SEALs with us. And so it was interesting to see the way they moved and the way they did their thing, because they had an entire different methodology, obviously, and they were totally differently uniformed, and their whole culture was different than ours. It was fascinating.
and but you had to warm them up to you as well. I mean, they're
Yeah,
considered like
oh
the,
yeah, I mean,
and then they have the
that's slightly intimidating. Yeah, I mean, it'll cause you to say, well, am I good enough for this thing? So, but a patrol is a patrol after all. So, I mean, obviously, um, it was not much different than obviously being just on a Marine patrol, but it was fascinating to see how they operate.
well, what was one of your favorite deployments that you've done, that you've gotten to be do as part of the military, whether it was going on a military campaign or somewhere else? Like, what was something you got to do that when you got there, you're like, I can't believe I'm doing this and I'm paid to
Yeah.
do it and I'm getting to use my gifts and talents. And here I'm doing something that I would have never imagined.
Well, the first time that happened, well, when I re-enlisted in the Marine Corps at 38 years old to become a combat artist, and within a couple of months I was over on a patrol in Iraq. It was kind of one of those things where I can't believe, what have I done, almost, but at the same time, it was like that. It was like, I can't believe I'm actually doing this. Is something so rare. Like, people just don't, it's almost like bucket list thing. Every day is a bucket list item that you didn't realize, and you're just checking off all these things. Um, but another one of my favorite things was with the Marine Corps and with the Navy. It's just going out on a ship. Um, for example, on the USS Wasp, we went over with the Osprey Squadron um, to the first deployment of the Ospreys over to Iraq, and we went through the Mediterranean and then the Suez Canal, and then flew into Al Assad Air Base. But that was fascinating. I mean, not everybody gets to do that sort of thing. And then one time I was with the Navy, and they let me go through um, the I became I became a shellback instead of a polywog. So when you cross the equator, you go through this ceremony, and it's this wonderful thing. So it's initiation. And so I actually have a little card that says I'm now a shellback, a trusty shellback, and not a polywog.
So
That was a great rite of passage for me. Not every artist gets to do, obviously.
that's fascinating. So you had mentioned earlier that you have other Marines that are combat artists and other civilian, and you kind of mentor them. You're teaching because, like, are you like I guess, like the senior artist right
Yeah,
now? I guess.
I basically manage the program. So I'm in charge of basically the recruitment and hiring and firing and sending and training and that sort of thing. Now I get mentored too, obviously, because two of the civilians, at least, there are actually three, I would say, are high level professional artists. One of which is a famous illustrator and who's done Rolling Stone covers, and he does political cartoons as well. And they're wonderfully talented. And so I learn a lot when I go, because I watch them work. And also their production is they're just doing it constantly honing their craft, because they know that they'll produce more and more, and they'll get better and better, and then they have more to show. And that's a great thing. So I mean, I get mentored too, obviously, and we kind of try to do it to where we'll send a younger artist out with an older artist, and they'll sort of say it's a uniformed younger person and an experienced civilian illustrator or artist, and this guy will let the young Marine know how to draw better, and this Marine will help the civilian artist, for example, get around in country
Yeah.
and navigate the culture of the Marine Corps, that sort of thing. So we sort of iron sharpen iron kind of thing with the way we deploy the artists.
I mean, it's that to me is just a really fascinating uh dynamic duo there, where these younger guys who go in the Marines are artists, they're getting to be with these seasoned artists,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's really, that doesn't really happen much in the art world. A lot of times, when I assume I'm not an artist, but I would assume like someone like Picasso would not take some 18-year-old kid under his wing and say, here, let me teach you how to be an artist so you can be as good as me. I think there's a lot of, I just assume like rock stars and stuff, there's egos involved. And in this situation, you got to put your ego to the side because you kind of, like you said, the younger guys helping the older guys get around. So they got to depend on him. And whereas the younger guy has to, a lot of times younger kids have egos like, I know everything, but they got to put that ego to the side to learn from the older generation on how
Oh
to
yeah.
just be better. And
Yes.
it's just, as artists,
Yes.
I know there's egos, but
There's egos. Yes.
got to put
Well,
it
the good part about that arrangement we have is that the younger ego and the older ego, they know they're getting something from each other, so
Yeah.
they're willing to trade that. You know what I mean? So let's say, well, I realize I don't know that much about this kind of art, and then this person has to realize, well, I don't know anything about this culture and how to get around in this combat zone, so I need to help. That sort of thing. So yeah, it's a great way. It's in a sense, it's kind of an apprenticeship, where it's a mutual apprenticeship in a sense.
that is just so, it's just very, to me, fascinating, interesting. Where do you see things going for you as an artist, and where you're at now? As you said, you're kind of in charge of this program. Where do you see things going for yourself as an
Well,
artist, as well as in the Marines? Do you want to continue this, or is this something when in a few years you're going to retire, but then focus more on just your art? Where are you going?
well, of course, eventually we have to retire. So right now I'm trying to build the program militarily speaking, and just keep bringing in people, especially uniformed artists, and building the program that way. And then for my work, I'm going to be continuing this historical series of images based upon the global war on terror, for example, the Battle of Fallujah, on Nasiriyah, and that sort of thing, and telling Marine Corps stories, specifically historical battles. And so I'm going to be focused on the historical work. I'm going to be continuing doing sculptures as well. And so we're just going to try to keep building. And then, of course, we'll pass the torch on to the next person that comes in. It was a long time passing since we had an artist in residence. It was the last one was Colonel Waterhouse, who was really the first one. So I'm a rare bird in that sense too. So it's a privilege to be selected for that sort of thing. So we're just going to keep building it, and then eventually we'll bring in the next artist in residence, and then just keep passing the torch. So we're just going to build the program, and then just honing the craft, so to speak.
That is so awesome, and I hope that you can come back and talk more. I'd also like to talk to you just about art in general sometime. I'd love to have you
Sure.
on again, and
Sure
because
thing.
I have seen your art, and you are very talented. And
Well, thank you very much, sir.
I know you've painted a portrait or two that are wonderful, and I'd love for you to do one of me someday.
Well, that's arrangeable. We can do that.
We'll have to talk about that. But thank you again, Mr. Battles, or Christopher Battles, for coming on and sharing this. I hope that people who are listening really understand this is fascinating history. And if there's a young man out there who's artistic, but also has like the love you like the calling that you had, that now they know that there is an opportunity that they can do both these things. And I hope that they are now more aware, and that perhaps they can join you and maybe mentor
Glad to have
them.
them. We're always looking for talented people who are willing to go out and do that.
Yes. Well, thank you again. And for all of you who are listening, thank you for joining us. And as always, stay safe and keep searching.